So good morning, everyone. Thank you, Manolo, for the introduction. I think we're going to have to wait until 3 o'clock to have lunch. That's a bit like we're going to be very hungry. 2 o'clock. You said 3 o'clock. You see, that's why, these are men kind of timings, right? I want to say last night we had a very civilized dinner, started at 7:30 and finished at 9:30. So those are the proper, timetables in today's society. Anyway, I would like to again thank Minister Calviño for being with us. Muchas gracias, Nadia, por estar aquí con nosotros. Y estamos ansiosos de escuchar tus palabras. And I would also like to thank every other speaker who has joined us from many countries. And we look forward to listening to what you have to say on this super important topic of trust and the challenges that we face, not just as business, but as society. So the theme of the conference and my talk today will be about trust. And I want to tell you why I believe trust is the critical factor in determining the future, not just for our industry, but of course for the economic system as we know it. And I would like to start with a definition of the term. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, trust is a firm belief in the reliability, truth, or ability of someone or something. Belief is the key word here, because belief is complicated. It is really the sum of the answers to 1,000 questions that we ask ourselves every day, and we ask ourselves when we evaluate someone. Do I believe they have good intentions? Do I believe they're honest, competent, reliable? And while it may seem hard to define what trust is, the good news is that we're increasingly able to quantify it. And of course, this being a banking conference, it felt right to try. In 2018, Accenture developed a competitive agility index, of which trust is a central component. They studied 7,000 companies over the course of 2.5 years. Over half experienced a material fall in trust, resulting in a 2-point fall in their index. And a 2-point fall in trust results in, on average, a 5.8% fall in revenues. And that's just the average. A 2-point fall for a bank leads to a 21.8, that's almost 22% hit to revenue growth. Trust matters. It is what gives us as customers the confidence to buy, investors the belief to invest, and society a willingness to embrace and host us. And so retaining it is critical. And there is one thing we know about trust for sure. It is hard to win, but all too easy to lose. And let's be candid, we did lose it. And we were not the only ones. In 2008, in the midst of what were already considerable challenges, climate change, the digital revolution, globalization, the financial crisis led us into a great recession. Untrustworthy behavior by a few contaminated public perception for us all. Politicians, businessmen, bankers, once trusted figures, now were untrustworthy. And this led to distrust of institutions everywhere. And as a result, political populism is ascendant. But although populism is the result of the global challenge we face, it cannot be the answer. We need an open and generous response to the problem of trust. And I firmly believe business can provide it. But how? Well, the first step is to accept the new reality in which we operate and the responsibility this dictates. I'm sure many of you, if not all, have read the statement from the US Business Roundtable, the club that brings together almost 200 CEOs of the world's largest companies. And this statement perhaps marks the beginning of that change. And the statement redefined the responsibilities of a business. And let me just read what they said, and I quote, "For corporations to be successful, durable, and return value to shareholders," it read, "they need to consider the interest and meet the fair expectations of a wide range of stakeholders, including employees, customers, and the communities in which they operate." The magnitude of the statement cannot be overlooked. It shocked The Economist, whose front page asked with incredulity, "What are companies for?" But the letter was right. We have responsibilities beyond our shareholders, and nobody should fear this. Capitalism has survived because it has always embraced change. Now, it must do so again. And this must be more than talk. This, to my mind, is a fundamental question of how businesses behave. In this regard, I must say that I feel lucky to have worked at Santander for the past 30 years. I am proud of the way we do business. I am proud of my team. Responsible banking has been central to our long history. We are a bank that sets out to help people and businesses prosper, though how we do so must adapt to each generation's changing environment. And in recent years, as I've said, and we all know, the environment has radically changed. Our customers' expectations now are different. The digital revolution has fundamentally changed how we operate, how our customers operate. Our regulatory environment has changed considerably. And our business has changed too. By the way, when I joined the bank, we were not just the sixth largest bank in Spain. We also had what at the time was called the International Division, which is the best words to say that we were not international. Today, we are the largest bank by value in the Eurozone, but very importantly, with 144 million customers across Europe and the Americas. But one thing has remained consistent: the commitment to helping our customers prosper. And when I took over, and one of my first speeches was here at this conference in 2014, it fell to me to continue that story. And I knew that the first thing I had to do was focus on winning the trust of all our stakeholders, many of whom had lost trust in our sector. And I knew we had to do this, both because running a trustworthy bank is the right thing to do, but also, and I know there's a lot of shareholders in the room, because it was, and it is, good business sense. Trust breeds loyalty, and loyalty is a critical component that underpins the strong financial performance of a bank. And my strategy was to focus on the basics, committing to 3 values: simple and personal and fair. Simple means giving our customers an accessible service, products they understand. Personal means providing products and services that are suited to the specific needs of our individual customers. And fair means treating all of our stakeholders fairly, being transparent, and honoring our promises. And I believe I can say with some confidence that we have been able to illustrate that you can do banking this way and succeed. I'm sure we'll all agree that the past 5 years have been difficult for European banks, but Santander has grown our revenues, our customer revenues, in the period by 6% each year. And this has been done in the right way. It has been based on trust and the loyalty we have won as a result from both new and existing customers. Our customer base is actually up by 44% in the period, and business customers, both SMEs and corporates, are up 67%. As I recently commented in Washington at the IMF, we now have more customers than any other bank in Europe and the Americas, and double the number of customers of the world's most valuable bank. We remain one of the most efficient and profitable banks when compared against our peers, with an underlying profit in 2018 of nearly 8.1 billion euros and a best-in-class cost-income ratio of 47%. And this has allowed us to invest in the strength of our business, adding, since the end of 2013 until the end of 2018, 25 billion euros to our common equity tier 1. And additionally, in that same period, our underlying profit has gone up by 87%, and for our investors, our cash dividend per share by 2.7 times. I will not give you more numbers, but I hope you remember some of the ones I just shared with you. And the reason this approach has worked for us is because we have worked hard for our stakeholders, for all our stakeholders. It is why this year Forbes, and we're very proud of this, ranked us as one of the world's 2,000 best regarded companies. And it is why the Dow Jones Sustainability Index considers Santander the most sustainable bank in the world. But I'd like to move away now from abstractions and talk about specifics. And I'd like to start with financial inclusion. Across Latin America, millions of people, once unable to borrow, their savings literally under the mattress, are now joining the financial system. And our goal is to financially empower 10 million people by 2025, 10 million people. And I'm happy to say that we're making progress. We delivered financial education to 360,000 people last year and supported over 270,000 micro-entrepreneurs in Latin America. And combined within these numbers is the real impact of our work. Stories of opportunities created, lives transformed, and dreams realized. Take Elsa from Santiago Tinguisquenco in Mexico. Elsa told me that banks in the past had told her that her business, her family business, was too small to open an account. And thanks for Santander's Tuyo, run by a fabulous woman, by the way, Norma, Tuyo's financial empowerment program, Elsa now has both an account and a banking card. Now, this might seem unimportant, but what it means is that Elsa is now able to receive payments through a Santander account. It means she no longer has to travel 4 hours every day to collect payments from her customers in Mexico City. So imagine what she can do as a businesswoman or a mother for herself in that time. And Elsa's story is one of many. And sometimes we should really take a step back and remember the impact of a single bank account can have. But the demand to regain trust actually requires that we do more than just deliver our core businesses, important as this is, because we can and must address the great challenges of the society in which we work. And across much of the developed world, productivity is slowing, wage growth is stalling, and inequality is rising. And these are problems that require a highly skilled workforce where opportunity is distributed more evenly and fairly. And we've invested 1.7 billion euros in Santander universities, which makes us actually the largest corporate contributor to higher education in the world, and we're very proud of our program. But I did say I tried to move away from the numbers. I keep on going back. So let me just share another story that illustrates the education importance, why this matters. So José Rivera Contreras studied at the Universidad Católica del Norte de Chile, and thanks to one of our university's exchange program funded by us, by Santander, he spent a year in Spain at the University of Zaragoza. And when we asked José to tell us about the experience, and here I quote again, he said the following. He said, "Living in another country helps you to form professional connections and friendships with people all over the world. I have moved up a rung on the ladder, thanks to the opportunity I was given. Those words explain what we are doing much better than I can, helping people move up the ladder. And we have many good stories to tell. But that does not mean we can and we will not rest on our laurels, because the work is only just starting. There is no problem more pressing than the threat of climate change, and it is easy to pretend that climate change is far away. But in truth, it is much closer than it appears from where we stand in these comfortable offices. And that's why this summer I visited Greenland to see the impact firsthand. And you could see literally huge chunks of ice breaking off from the glaciers. But what's important, they're doing so at an exponential rate compared to the last few years, in the last few years compared to the previous decades or centuries. Irreversible change that you can actually see there in front of your own eyes. Change that, if we do not stop, will have a devastating impact on our planet, on many millions of people. And this is no inheritance that I would like to give our children. So we must act. And again, it's not just the right thing. It also, as I said before, makes good business sense. And failing to act will have catastrophic events on the businesses and individuals we serve. Failing to act will cause irreparable harm to the trust that we're working so hard to win back. And at Santander, we're already one of the leading providers of green finance in the world. Between 2015 and 2018, we raised close to 50 billion euros. Last month alone, we actually issued a 1 billion euro green bond, which was very successful. But we are going to accelerate. Our aim is to mobilize 120 billion euros by 2025 and 220 billion euros by 2030. By the way, this is just some examples of the kind of opportunities there are to create sustainable growth in the future. There's a lot of space here for government and private sector to work together and do a bit more fiscal policy. But this is just a start. Very proud to say, and very proud of our government, and represented here by Minister Calviño, that Madrid will host the COP25. That's a great news for everybody. And it's a great sign that nations realize our collective responsibility to tackle climate change. And I actually read, I think yesterday, the Secretary General of the United Nations writing in the FT today saying we must ask ourselves how we can mobilize the full power of capital and the behavior of all our customers to do more. How can we help people use their savings to invest in responsible business? How can we reward customers for making environmentally friendly purchases? Some of our banks actually doing that already. How can we increase the number, this is very important too, of long-term investors that reward sustainable returns? Put simply, how can we ensure we are part of the solution and not part of the problem? It is the only way we will win trust. And I know, and it's evident, that Santander does not face these challenges alone, and neither are we alone in acting. Many others are playing their part. And let's not forget that we live in a safer and more prosperous world than most people believe, and the companies within it operate far more responsibly than many believe. But trust is like a jewel. It is precious but fragile. It can break easily, and the loss is painful. And that is why we must set ambitious targets and keep all the promises we make, why we must be transparent and provide clear evidence of what we have done. But facts alone, whether targets, investment, tax contributions, cannot win an argument, even more so in this emotionally charged public debate we find ourselves in today. We need to keep telling our story. Today I told you about Elsa in Mexico and Jose in Chile. You will actually hear from an amazing woman later on, Silvia Flores, Gracias, Silvia, por estar hoy aquí con nosotros. She comes from La Juanita in Buenos Aires and is an amazing example of what, the sheer force of will can do. And I'm sure that long after you have forgotten the facts and figures I have shared, you will recall those stories. And it is our responsibility to make sure these stories can take place. And then we have to tell them. I am sometimes asked why I speak out on these big issues, from climate change, of course, to feminism. There are two reasons. The first is personal. I believe there is a duty for those who have the privilege of a platform to use it. But there is another reason. The world is changing, and the role of business is changing within it. And what the Business Roundtable echoes is what I said at this conference, in a different way maybe, but same thing, 5 years ago, that we need to change. That we must look beyond maximizing shareholder value as a sole objective and consider our wider and full responsibilities. And this debate is often framed as a choice between maximizing shareholder value or meeting the needs of all our stakeholders. And this is a false choice. Trust is not a nice to have for a profitable business. Trust determines whether you have a profitable business to run. 5 years on, that need for change is more important than ever if we're to win and keep people's trust and loyalty. We have huge responsibilities as the guardians of businesses in this modern world. We must recognize them and do more to live up to them. If we don't, business as usual may lead us to no business at all. But if we do, I believe our future is bright. Thank you very much.